Picture your next meal. A cheeseburger, chicken nuggets, a breakfast sandwich with bacon. Different brands, different restaurants, different grocery stores. But what if I told you there's one hidden meat giant behind them all? Not Tyson. Not your local farmer. A name you've probably never seen, JBS. This Brazilian powerhouse is the biggest meat processing company on Earth. Bigger than Tyson, bigger than Cargill's meat division, bigger than any other slaughterhouse giant you can name. Every day, JBS processes tens of millions of chickens, tens of thousands of cattle, thousands of pigs, enough to feed entire countries daily. They own Pilgrim's Pride. They own Swift. They own massive beef and pork plants across North America, South America, Europe, Australia. And the average shopper has no clue. Walk into Walmart. That store brand frozen chicken? Could be JBS. That burger patty at a fast food joint? Could be JBS. The bacon you bought last week? Same. They don't care if you see their name, because you almost never do. The brands in your fridge are just masks for the same global slaughter machine printing billions in profit while you grill in the backyard. It didn't start that way. In the 1950s, José Batista Sobrino opened a tiny butcher shop in Brazil. His sons, Josley and Wesley Batista, turned it into an empire with an appetite for takeover deals. By the 2000s, they were gobbling up local rivals, then went global, buying U.S. giants like Swift & Company, Australia's Primo, Europe's Moy Park. Each deal made them bigger and gave them leverage over what ends up on your plate. But here's the twist. This isn't a feel-good underdog story. JBS didn't grow quietly by just being great at selling meat. They grew by mastering the art of backroom deals, shady bribes, and political power. In Brazil, they were at the heart of the country's biggest corruption scandal, a scandal that sent shockwaves through Congress and took down presidents. How bad was it? The Batista brothers admitted to bribing more than 1,800 politicians. Not one or two, 1,800. They handed out cash, favors, secret campaign funding, all to get access, cheap loans, favorable regulations. They paid billions in fines but walked away with the crown, the world's meat supply chained to their plants. So how did the Batista brothers pull this off while staying mostly invisible to you? Because meat is boring, and they know it. Nobody wants to think about the slaughterhouse when they unwrap a burger. The perfect business is one where people can't boycott you without giving up dinner. And JBS owns that trap. When they wanted to expand in the U.S., they didn't just buy brands. They bought supply chains. They grabbed slaughterhouses in the Midwest, chicken plants in the South, pork plants in Canada. They swallowed Pilgrim's Pride, now one of the biggest chicken producers in America. So when you see Pilgrims on the pack, you don't see JBS. But the profits flow straight to Sao Paulo. Want beef in a Big Mac? Want bacon in your breakfast sandwich? Want nuggets at school lunch? Odds are somewhere in that supply chain is JBS. And if you think you can dodge them, good luck. They don't need to win you over with ads. They need to control the middle. The ranchers, the feedlots, the slaughterhouses, the packing plants. And once they do, they set the price. And what happens when they mess up? Food recalls, COVID outbreaks, price-fixing allegations. They've seen it all, and they just keep growing. In 2021, the FBI linked JBS to one of the biggest ransomware attacks ever. Hackers hit their IT systems and shut down meat plants across the US, Canada, and Australia. For days, supermarket meat supply chains buckled. It showed how fragile the system really is. One shadow giant, one cyber attack, and suddenly, there's no bacon at your grocery store. But maybe the wildest twist is how the Batista brothers survived the scandal that nearly brought them down. When the bribery files exploded in Brazil, the brothers turned on everyone, wearing wiretaps, handing evidence to prosecutors. They flipped so well that they got plea deals, paid massive fines, and barely did prison time. The scandal tanked Brazil's stock market overnight, embarrassed entire ministries. But JBS, still here, bigger than ever. They rebranded, hired new execs, put family members in the background, started pitching green meat and sustainable beef. They sponsor sports teams. They run glossy PR campaigns. Meanwhile, they keep buying more plants, more land, more cattle. The scandals fade. The supply chain stays theirs. And while other companies fight tooth and nail for your loyalty, JBS doesn't care. They win when you don't think about where the meat comes from. They win when your grocery store only has one supplier left for cheap cuts. They win when you think the brand on the box is the story and never ask who built the slaughterhouse that packed it. But controlling the meat isn't just about profits, it's about power. And JBS figured out early that whoever controls cheap protein controls entire countries. Think about it, meat is politics. If beef prices spike, people riot. If chicken supply drops, politicians panic. If pork plants shut down, grocery stores get empty shelves. That's leverage no flashy tech startup can match. In Brazil, meat is national pride. Barbecue culture is life. JBS used that. They tied their name to the country's export boom. They made Brazil the world's biggest beef exporter. They built deals with China, the EU, the Middle East. When mad cow disease spooked European producers, JBS grabbed new markets. When droughts hit Australia's beef supply, JBS snapped up local ranches. Every crisis somewhere else meant more opportunity for them. Meanwhile, they pitched themselves as the future of sustainable protein. They promised net zero beef, carbon-neutral pork, responsible chicken. It's good PR, but environmental watchdogs say the reality is messy. Some of Brazil's worst deforestation has been linked to ranchers supplying JBS. Amazon rainforest cleared for cattle. Indigenous lands pushed aside for new pastures. When caught, JBS says they didn't know. The supply chain is too big, too complex, too hidden. That's the trick. Hide behind the supply chain. They buy cattle from middlemen. Middlemen buy from ranchers. Ranchers push the forest line deeper. By the time the beef hits your burger, the paperwork says approved. Everyone shrugs. The rainforest shrinks, but the profits grow. And it's not just beef. JBS is in fish, in plant-based meat startups, in lab-grown meat experiments. If you want protein, they want to sell it. Doesn't matter if you think you're saving the planet by skipping steak, JBS wants a piece of the next burger, too. Impossible. Beyond? Private label vegan nuggets? Fine, they'll own that supply chain, too. And here's where it circles back to you. You can't boycott them easily. They hide behind dozens of brands and supply deals. Switch from brand A to brand B? Same slaughterhouse. Go organic? Some sustainable cuts come from the same mega plants, just with a green label and a higher price. The genius is you can't see them. You don't see the JBS name in the meat aisle. You see Pilgrim's Pride, Swift, Moy Park, Seara, different brands for different regions. Same profits flowing back to Sao Paulo. Next time you grill, check the label. If it's not them, odds are it's someone who sells to them. Because when you feed billions of people, you don't need a billboard. You need silence. And that's the real secret of JBS. So what happens when you build a meat empire this big? So big it touches nearly every burger, nugget, and bacon strip on Earth? You get the power to bend prices, squeeze suppliers, and stay invisible to the shoppers paying your bills. Behind the scenes, ranchers know the game. Many small farmers say they have no choice but to sell cattle to JBS. In the U.S., JBS has faced lawsuits claiming price fixing, accusations that big meat packers secretly collude to keep prices to ranchers low, while prices at the grocery store stay high. If you're a rancher, good luck fighting the world's biggest slaughterhouse on your own. And if you think governments can tame them, think again. JBS is so huge that entire regions depend on their plants. In small towns in the Midwest, a single JBS beef plant might employ thousands. Shut it down? The local economy collapses overnight. That's real leverage. Politicians talk tough, but when push comes to shove, communities want jobs, not empty factories. And while you watch viral clips about factory farming, the real machine never stops humming. JBS quietly buys more plants, more brands, more land. They pump out press releases about sustainability, green packaging, better animal welfare. Meanwhile, critics say the supply chain stays just as hidden, just as brutal, only bigger every year. They've even stepped into the next frontier, controlling what you think is ethical. JBS now pours millions into plant-based and lab-grown meat investments. So when you switch to a veggie burger thinking you're sticking it to big meat, surprise! JBS owns a stake in the startup too. They win if you eat meat. They win if you quit meat. They don't care what's on your plate, as long as they built the factory that made it. They've also mastered the art of cleaning their reputation. After the bribery scandal exploded, the Batista brothers got house arrest, paid billions in fines. Then the company rebranded and marched on. Shareholders shrugged. Governments still buy their products. Supermarkets still stock their cuts. Fast food chains still sign supply deals. The same families flipping burgers never know whose pockets they're filling. And the next crisis? They'll survive that too. Because when you sell meat, you sell something nobody can skip. You can't boycott beef forever. You can't cook every meal without the supply chain they control. You might not see their logo, but you'll see their influence every time you open the fridge. So next time you stand in the grocery aisle and wonder why the cheapest meat always comes from the same shelf, look closer. Ask whose slaughterhouse packaged that ground beef. Ask who profits when pork prices spike or when fast food chains sell billions of nuggets. Odds are, somewhere on the paperwork, it's JBS. They don't want you to see them. They want you to argue about brands, grill your steak, and think the meat came from some friendly local butcher. But behind that sticker is a global empire with more power than most people know. An empire built on silence, secrecy, and the reality that you can't eat without them getting paid. So the next time you bite into that burger, remember, it's not just a burger. It's another brick in the world's biggest slaughterhouse. This is Midnight Watch. Subscribe if you want more secrets the biggest meat giants hope you'll never Google. Drop a comment. Who should I expose next? Because behind every meal, there's always a name you don't see. And sometimes, that name is the richest butcher in the world.